Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have a great guest on. Now, one of the things that I always found very interesting about the Business Talk Library is early on, we saw a lot of traction from entrepreneurs in Canada, and growing up in the U.S., it was one of those things where I wasn't exposed to the entrepreneurial environment in Canada. But one of the things we have realized is there are a lot of great entrepreneurs that are building great businesses and doing great things in Canada. And today we have another great entrepreneur, Hussain Bandukwala, on to talk about his business. And I want to welcome him to the show. So welcome to the show, Hussain.
Thanks so much for having me, Terrell.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the pleasure is all mine to have you now. Before we jump into your business, and I want to hear, what was your background before starting your current business?
Yeah, I've been a management tech consultant, prior to starting my own business. So, in fact, I went to school. I'm in Toronto now, but I went to school in the US in Midwest Ohio. And then, did 4 years there and moved to the Washington, D.C. area and lived and worked there for about 9, 10 years. And I was into consulting all this while. So, focusing on, your corporates and businesses, helping them, lead, transformational projects and programs and helping them, get consistent delivery and predictable, consistent delivery in their projects and initiatives and better ROI for them. That's really been my background, primarily in the tech space as well. And Yeah, that's been my background.
Okay. Now, how was it? I mean, going from company to company, I mean, like I said, helping them really put together, like you said, those repeatable processes. Did you find that, the clients you were working with, they had the mindset to understand it, or did you have to do a lot of education to get them comfortable with that?
The core stakeholders that brought us in, they were fine, but I think that the people that needed to start adopting it, the change and putting that into their day-to-day lives at work, that's where a lot of education happened. That was classic change management, right? Where you need to make sure that they were aware of what was happening right up front and they were involved through the process. And then we started rolling it out. They had already bought into it. If you went ahead and just told them, here's here's how you used to do things, and now today onwards is going to be this way, good luck with that, right? So not a lot of education with the core stakeholders, but with the people who were sort of impacted by the stuff that was happening, the kind of projects that we were rolling out. There was a lot of education that needed, from that perspective, for sure.
Okay. I always find that interesting because I know when I was at General Electric, when we were doing kind of a finance transformation, and the segment of the business that I was responsible for was wanting to be the one that we tested the approach with. And I spent a lot of time working with the people who were going to do the day to day, because the changes we were doing were going to drastically change their job, and it's just the emotions that people had with being able to let go and adapt. It was something that I think a lot of people underestimated, where they were like, hey, yeah, this process is going to go here, you're just going to tell these people they're going to be doing this. It's like there's going to be a whole lot of emotion that they got to work through to make that change.
Oh yeah, in major projects, there's a sub project just for that adoption, right? I think a lot of people think that they can just devote maybe 1 or 2 weeks of training right at the end of the projects and then hope that things would go well is a sure recipe for disaster, right? I mean, you need to sort of really think through right up front at the project cycle how these people's lives are going to get changed, how what are the emotions, how do we handle that, how do we there's obviously going to be the knowledge skills gap, but then the emotions gap, the pace of change, how do we address that? That really needs to be thought through and baked in the actual delivery of the project. If you think and hope that yeah, you'll just do your piece and then the ops side or the business side will take over, that's not how it is. That's not a what a successful transition would look like. So that needs
Mhm.
to be really thought through.
Absolutely. So now, when you've gone from management consulting, and now what really led you into starting your current business?
My family's always been into you know, a business of its own, and we have family businesses. But I wanted to go ahead and venture out on my own, and that was something that I knew I would do. It was just a matter of time. And interestingly, when I moved from the US to Canada, that's when I started trying that out. And just I would say I remember 8 months into Canada, there was a startup competition that sort of or a hackathon rather that happened in Toronto. And I thought to myself, let me go through this, and if I like it, I know I need to get into my own business. And I went through it. I loved it. And shortly after, I started my own, or the co-founded my own startup, which I ran for about 2 years or so on a part-time basis. And then me and my co-founder realized, either we go full-time into the business, or we say, that's it, let's wrap it up, because we weren't at a point where we would go out for funding, um, and run the startup that way. So we had to shut it down, sadly, but lots of great lessons learned. We got a lot of support, and those sort of lessons learned sort of led down to eventually to where I am today.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, what was that experience like? I mean, with reaching that conclusion that hey, we got to shut this down. I mean, I guess did you take any? I guess was it a hit to your ego, or how did you process that?
It was in the startup world particularly, and in North America, I would say, perhaps in other parts of the globe it's not that way, but like just having co-founded a startup, and sort of going through the sort of experiences that we went through, because we were supported by a few business incubators and accelerator programs. We had some level of traction. Even if it didn't go that well, it was still a badge of honor, right? So it was a sort of a bittersweet moment where we had to sort of say bye to our baby, but at the same time we were proud of the achievements and the accomplishments that we had. And so I think that sort of led through, and we did try in our minds, try to put a positive spin to it quite a bit as well.
Mhm. Awesome. And one of the times of, I guess you say, a very effective and successful entrepreneurs that I've seen is, having to go through experience like that where they, the first business didn't work out, or let's say a business didn't work out, but still coming back to starting a new business, which brings us to, so was it the current business that you run now? Is that the business you started after that?
I did, yeah. So I started that, I would say, shortly after the startup was shut down. But again, I was doing this business part time for about 5.5, 6 years till I decided to go full time into it.
Mhm.
So uh, that transition from part time entrepreneur, which was the case even with my startup, to full time, that was a major achievement, I would say, or a jump. Not that I'm there where I want to be, but uh, just the fact that now I'm focused 100% into my business, both feet, and that has been a major transformation for myself, for my family, for my wife and kids, and the way that I'm approaching and attacking the growth of this business.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, I guess were there some certain signs that you looked for that said, that gave you the indication that, hey, you know what, now's the time to go all in?
Yeah, I mean, doing this part time for 5.5, 6 years, I realized that, the amount of offerings and services that I had were crafted around the time I had available, right? And because of that, my price points were, dependent on that, and the level of amount of work that I needed to put into the business development side, the lead gen side, the nurturing of prospects wasn't as much. And so I realized that if I want to, if I'm serious about growing this business, I can't do it half-heartedly. And the part-time work was definitely showing part-time results, right? So if I wanted to really and seriously take this to the next level, I had to go both feet. And some sort of a bit of advice that I had received from fellow entrepreneurs, a few years back, but I never took it seriously because I kept on hearing stories about how people were able to sort of do their work full time, but focused on their side hustles till they were ready to go in. And that moment didn't come for me. It just wasn't coming. And over the years, I realized I wasn't getting any younger either, and the amount of energy that I had started diminishing, through the days. Because even with my day jobs, they would just be exhausting. Then, obviously family needs, etc. Um, so the amount of time that I could devote to actually, grow the business,
Mhm.
or the side hustle at that point wasn't enough. So, something had to give. Either, again, quit the business or quit the job. And I decided to quit the job.
Awesome, awesome. So now with your business, what are the types of services or products that people can expect from your business?
Yeah, so I really, help organizations level up the delivery of their projects, level up how well they execute their projects and get better ROI on them. And it could be any kinds of projects, whether they're tech projects, construction projects, medical projects, no matter what type of projects there are. And I focus on that by helping them either regenerate or set up their project management offices, or focus on upskilling their project delivery teams through workshops and trainings. Now, as many people on this call may or may not be aware of what a project management office or a PMO is, but think of it as a department or role or function within an organization that's responsible for all things project management. So the way you have, the marketing department taking care of all marketing things, and the IT department taking care of all IT things, you have a PMO or a project management office that's responsible for all things project management. So all the standards, the quality assurance of the projects, the timely execution, making sure there's right resources on it, making sure you're using the right tools and templates, and ensuring that projects are getting delivered in a consistent way, and then the right diligence is being put in to make sure that that's happening as well. And so what I do is I help organizations set up and optimize that. And in some cases where they feel they're comfortable with that, but the project team needs help in terms of um, better workshops, or improvement, or even some sort of an assessment or an audit on how they're doing. That's the kind of work that I do.
Awesome, awesome. So if people are looking for you online or on social media, how can they find you?
Yeah, so they can go on my website, parwazcc.com. That's PARWAAZCC.com. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. They can search for Hussain Bandukwala and find me there. I also have my own podcast as well. It's called the PMO Huddle, where I interview fellow PMO leaders, and learn about their journeys and how they're going through the setup and evolution of their PMOs. So it's really a PMO leaders for PMO leader, a podcast for PMO leaders by PMO leaders. That's how I like to call it. So yeah, that's those are some of the avenues that they can find me. Also, I'm a LinkedIn Learning instructor,
Okay.
which is LinkedIn's online education platform, and people can find me there as well.
Awesome, awesome. Now with your podcast, how often are you releasing new episodes?
The cadence has been a bit off and on,
Mhm.
but as we speak, the goal is to do it on a weekly basis.
Okay, nice, nice. So if you're watching or you're listening and you want to learn a little bit more and hear about, inside information from PMOs, definitely check out the pod. And what's the name of the podcast?
The PMO Huddle.
Got it, got it. Check out the PMO huddle. Well, Zan, one of the questions that I like to ask every guest that comes on is, based on your journey of where you've been and based on where your business is now and the different things that you're doing and you've seen, if you've learned, what are two pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I think one piece of advice I already mentioned earlier, which I received from someone years back, was try to go in with both feet and as quickly as you can. If you're doing your business as a side hustle, if you're part time into it, try to get into it as quickly as you can, because once you have your feet to the fire, uh, you know a lot of things will happen. You'll start taking things more seriously. The type of offerings that you have, that will be different. The amount of energy and focus that you can devote to your business, that's gonna be transformational. So try to go ahead and do that as quickly as you can. The second piece of advice is really an introspection, and looking at what do you think you can best bring to the table. And there are many traits and qualities and attributes of entrepreneurs, but to me, the one trait that resonates the most, that defines between a successful and a not so successful entrepreneur, is the attribute of perseverance. If you can develop your perseverance through anything, that will lead you to an entrepreneurial success. It may not be for this specific business, but in the long term, as an entrepreneur, you will succeed if you learn to persevere. So look into that, tap into that attribute. If you feel you're lacking, try to find ways to go ahead and develop it. But that's something that you should be looking out for on a constantly basis.
Awesome. Well, Hussain, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing your story, telling us about your business, the services you offer, also your podcast as well. And for the LinkedIn learning courses, when they're looking for your LinkedIn learning courses, they just search for your name, or do they search for like the title of your courses?
Well, I think they can search for my name and all the courses will show up.
Okay, perfect. Well, definitely thank you so much for coming on the show.
Terrell, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.